This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Be sure to keep an eye out for the information. I know what you're thinking. Kamen, you haven't even gotten to talking about the girls at Yugioh Zexal. Why are you talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5? Also, when are we gonna get back to that series? Well, here's something that you guys need to realize when I make a video talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially for the series that are more recent. I wasn't watching them all religiously. I was starting to get a little bit older and fell off the newer show. As such, when I go back to review a show, I also watch the series afterwards, so that way I don't let my immediate thoughts be the ones to take over. I have to let the events of the show and the characters roam around my head and then take notes on what happens in said show. So, while I may or may not be working on the script for Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal Girls, which may or not be coming out, I watched the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, and I got a few things to say about it. Not to mention, I got really burned out on the video series I was making. Doesn't help that when you put a lot of effort into videos and they don't get a lot of views, it kinda tells you don't continue. Funnily enough though, Arc 5 was a show that I was following quite a bit. Zexal's initial season and structure had put me off from watching it during the time, hence why I had to go back and watch the series in full.
Cause I'm about to high-five the sky!
And I remembered why I dropped Zexal. Look, this isn't a video about Zexal, but rather Arc 5. And it was a series that had a lot of potential to it, but ultimately was a huge mistake. And today we're going to be talking about those mistakes. But before that,
we interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Cause I figure, if there is intelligent life out there, then let's teach them how to duel.
Hey Vsauce, Raid Shadow Legends here.
I enjoy trying out different games, and Raid Shadow Legends is one game that I find to be at the very least intriguing. And hey, you don't need a deck of 40 cards to play the game, you just need your phone. With awesome visuals, loads of powerful champions, challenging PvE bosses, and tactical PvP content, you've got your pick on what you can do in this game. But wait, there's more. One of the more interesting bosses is the Hydra, a clan boss with 6 heads, each with their own unique flavor, like the head of Torment. Damn, looks like we just jumped into a death metal album, which is why it's so terrifying. It specializes in using true fear to drag down your team, making you skip your turns and lose access to your skills. And the only way to stop it is to hide. You need to bring champions that have Veil or Perfect Veil skills if you want a chance against this head, or the head of Mischief. With a name like that, you can only imagine that this is going to be pure chaos in the fight, and it seems like it has a lot of fun doing it. If this head gets a turn when you fully buffed up a champion, with sticky fingers it'll steal all the buffs from him, and then spread it to the other Hydra heads in battle. Basically, it makes sure you're going to have a tough fight, and you can't even take this head out of the fight easily since it can also redirect your attacks to other Hydra heads. So good luck trying to take this one out. For new players, you can get your hands on the Stag Knight, one of the best epic champions around, as well as a skin for Stag Knight designed by JonTron. Just use the promo code JTSKIN before October 7th. It's as easy as that. Don't worry if you're not a new player, you can still get Stag Knight in the skin through an in-game event. Everybody likes free stuff, right? Especially when the free stuff in question is a legendary champion. Check out Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the Monkey King from Chinese mythology. He's made his grand appearance in the game and couldn't be easier to get him. Just log in on 7 different days between now and October 23rd and get your hands on him. No demons to slay or journeys to the west to undertake here. Just log in and get this awesome champion for free. With all this exciting stuff coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. We're talking an epic champion, Drake, and other useful things. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name MangaKamen, and if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. So just hit my link in the description and I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Now let's get our game on.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Are my goggles really that stupid? Or is my mind playing tricks on me? More importantly, should I trust this smiley Nico man? Or should I just sit here, waiting for everything to sort itself out? Nah, fuck it. Might as well trust him.
The series takes place in a weird flux of the Yu-Gi-Oh world, mainly because the world has been split into 4 dimensions. The standard dimension, the Xyz dimension, the SYNCHRO dimension, and the fusion dimension. This was in coordination with the types of extra deck summoning at the time of Arc 5, with the standard dimension being akin to that of the original Yu-Gi-Oh world in a sense. We follow Yuya Sakaki, an entertainment duelist who discovers a new kind of summoning, pendulum summoning, and tries to discover how this new kind of dueling can be used to help with his entertainment dueling as well as living up to his father's ideals.
Son, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Said father Yugioh Sakaki disappeared a few years before the story and was a very famous duelist who made the entertainment dueling style a thing. Another notable character is Yuzu Haragi, No, I refuse to use Zuzu Boyle for her. That name sucks. I know what they're going for, but it still sucks.
You saved me? Yeah.
Anyway, Yuzu is one of Yuya's childhood friends, and they're attempting to become professional duelists. However, along with a drama with pendulum summoning, people who look like Yuya are showing up into the city, searching for girls who look like Yuzu. Eventually, the standard dimension gets invaded by the Obelisk Force, led by the worst villains in all of Yugioh, Leo AKABA. As it turns out, Yuya and Yuzu are reincarnations of people who were part of the previous dimension. Yuya is one of 4 pieces of a duelist named Zark, who was turned into a monster because of there being a lot of dueling that was akin to gladiator fights.
Shut when you think about it.
Meanwhile, Yuzu is one of 4 parts of a girl named Rei, who is the daughter of Leo AKABA, who stopped Zark from destroying the universe with his dragons. The two were each split into 4 different dimensional counterparts and became different characters. And Leo's goal for invading the other dimensions and capturing Yuzu and her lookalikes is to bring back his daughter and to stop Zark from reforming. Now, it sounds like a convoluted plot, and that's because it is.
It's best not to think about stuff.
I understand wanting to up the fantastical nature of the show and raising the stakes, but there were a number of issues with the plot. But before we talk about the issues with the plot, I want to talk about Darkside of Dimensions.
Fire whoever designed that bottle. Kaiba Corp's products shouldn't bend that easily.
If you're not familiar with this title, and why would you be since you're watching a Yu-Gi-Oh video, this was a movie that was made to commemorate Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole and was essentially a sequel story to the original. The plot itself isn't all that important to what I want to talk about, but I feel I should bring this movie up for one reason, and that there was a rumor that part of the reason why Arc 5's production had issues was due to the fact that time, money, and animators were taken to help produce the movie. This wasn't the first time that a rumor like this surfaced when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh! I recall there being rumors of this same thing happening during Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds for the 10th anniversary film. However, I can't say for 100% that it's true or not. There was a tweet from the production team that apparently confirmed that there were issues, but it was deleted, so I can't say whether or not it is actual. But regardless, I wanted to bring this up just so that you guys know that I'm aware of these rumors, but at this point I can't be sure if they're true or not. The only evidence I could find was a tweet that essentially proved that there were a lot of production woes because the higher-ups weren't allowing the animators to actually, animate. If there's evidence to either side, let me know, but for now we have to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 and why it was a mistake, starting with...
Let's get toxic!
I want to make it clear, sometimes the worst kind of characters aren't the characters who are bad role models, such as...
Jesus, I shot myself!
But characters like Chloe Price are bad and do annoy me for when I'm told to like them. These kinds of characters pale in comparison to a character that I myself want to like and do like, but then I'm forced to watch them degrade into mush. Yuya Sakaki is probably simultaneously my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist and at the same time my least favorite. And before we continue, I need to point out something that I said before on this channel. I'm talking about my points in both my GX was a mistake video and my Yubel video from long time ago. No matter how terrible a situation is, a positive attitude can help people get through dark times. And the way this quote is being made, it seems like the only way to beat someone like Yami Merrick was through pure seriousness.
If I look past the fact that he's just really cool and edgy...
I don't agree with that. And that's what Yuya is.
I actually agree with you.
He's an entertainment duelist whose goal was to be an entertainer and bring smiles to people. A mindset that he brings into his duels. That's something I do love. Showing that you can have fun and at the same time kick people's asses. It's a thought process that I do when I'm scripting and making assets for art or videos. I'm an entertainer at the end of the day, and whether or not you like me, and whether or not you find me fun to watch, well, I did manage to get a big number of subs here somehow.
Fine, I guess you are my little PogChamp. Come here.
No!
And that's fine, I really enjoy that. Throw in the fact that the mechanic of action duels, you have a character who's a lot more physically active during the card game matches and adds more visual stimulus than just standing around shouting, "I throw down a face down."
Come on, Crow! Let's go play a card game while standing completely still on the ground.
There was a lot of potential with this character, and throw in the fact that his father, his role model, is missing and obviously had a lot of influence on Yuya as a person, you've got a very dynamic character here. The problem is that the writers kinda led Yuya to his goals a bit too early in the show, and had to regress in his development to do so.
Bring it on, Nature Boy!
During the second major arc of the series, the SYNCHRO arc, Yuya and the rest of the group is entering into a dueling tournament. Eventually, Yuya managed to face off against the champion of Neo Domino City, Jack Atlas. Yes, Jack is back.
Is Jack Atlas not the finest sushi chef in the land?
And we'll be talking about him later. Anyway, Yuya is able to defeat Jack in a duel, and at the same time inspire peace and unity to the people of the dimension. I have a lot of issues with the SYNCHRO arc, which we'll be getting to later. But this part I really enjoyed, as it was a good character moment for Yuya and solidified his ideals to bring smiles through dueling.
Today is a great day. The only way it could have been better is if I had won.
The problem is, after that, they had to go to the next dimensions, and we're in a full-blown war between them, where you have Yuya still preaching that smiles are the only thing important in dueling. This goes in the opposite direction when it comes to my issues with Yuki Judai and the Yubel development in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, especially when it came off as the cult of smiles being stuffed down my throat. Hello sir, have you heard of the Church of Smile World? What? You think that since people are essentially being killed that we should have some level of seriousness here? That's no good! I want to make it clear that my issue with Judai becoming more serious was that it seemed to stem more from a misunderstanding of his character, where he apparently didn't take any duels seriously before the 3rd and 4th season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, when that wasn't true. There were a number of duels where Judai didn't see them as just good fun time and trivialized the situation. The problem with Yuya was him pushing the ideals of entertainment dueling onto others. Like, there's a line that Jack Atlas tells Yuya.
お前も口にしたな、エンタメデュエルと。だが、お前のデュエルは独りよがりに過ぎない。エンターテインメントには程遠い。
Listen up, Yuya. You call yourself a duel-tainer? Well, here's my review. Your performance was abysmal, mediocre at best. And I'm gonna bring the curtain down on you.
That your dueling is self-satisfaction, and that's exactly the problem with Yuya, as after the SYNCHRO arc, Yuya seems to go around in circles. After defeating Jack, he should already come to the conclusion that yes, dueling can be used for smiles, but that dueling can be serious too. Yuya is constantly questioning his goal and motivations, and that isn't a bad thing. In fact, I find it really refreshing to see an anime protagonist stop to think if what they're doing is the right thing. I do somewhat get tired of seeing protagonists being so hard-headed that they can't stop and think maybe they aren't doing the right stuff.
How do you sleep at night, Yuya? With pillows mostly.
However, the issue arises when Yuya questions the same goal in the same way in response to the same events. We could have had a character whose ideals were clashing with what reality was. One who could evolve and while still believing his ideals would be able to understand that there was a time and place for it. You know, not force his ideals onto others. Instead, we get Yuya pushing his ideology onto others almost effortlessly. While I do believe that smiles are important, they aren't the answer to everything. It's why I like Judai as a protagonist. While Judai believed that dueling could just be for fun, he wasn't blinded that there were times where dueling was just done for serious reasons. Smiles are important, but smiles can't help you when you're starving. They can't help you when you're stabbed in the back. I think what I find more infuriating is that Yuya's able to convert people so easily. We're talking about people who have been indoctrinated for years to attack others based on the fact that they use a different summoning method to them, or people who have been seeing the ravages of war. Another character, Kurosaki, he's a character who I can believe could be turned to see Yuya's line of thinking. He's from the XC's dimension, which was attacked and essentially destroyed, his friends being trapped in cards. Kurosaki obviously sees dueling as a form of warfare because of it. As time went on though, and he was able to see the good that Yuya's dueling could do, he slowly warmed up to the idea but still maintained his own ideology. His change is one I could totally see happening because there was enough time and exposure to show this to him. But characters like the Tyler sisters, who had just had one duel and essentially became fans of Yuya, and I must stress, these two were enforcers that were essentially sent to kill people, well, it's not as believable. It comes off as a cult, with Yuya being the leader.
You stay positive. You always believe that everything is going to work out. How do you do it?
Well, I'll tell you my secret, sir.
I lie to myself.
Be careful not to drink any punch that he offers you, and that really sucks too, because he doesn't really change. He's still the same boy who's scared of his power and insistent on proving his way is right.
A world filled with happiness and joy. Your buddies took it all away.
Stuff happens.
You can literally see the puppet strings of the writers on this because they never seem to allow any of the characters to convincingly argue why Yuya could be wrong. And how could he be wrong? We're never really given a good reason as to why he's right, or even before the why, what it would look like if he was right or wrong, effectively convincing people who have their lifelong beliefs turned in one duel or two, and that sucks.
Back to the future, or the present, or whatever.
I'm sure those who aren't familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 are probably wondering why I'm bringing up Jack Atlas, a prominent main character from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds.
I'm here to serve you. The only thing you've ever served is a tennis ball.
Well, that's the thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 had a lot of legacy characters introduced into the show, although, oddly enough, none from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series.
This place is an outdated joke.
Funny that, huh? One of the characters that returned...
Who the sprocket are you?
Of the characters that returned, we have Asuka and Edo from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Kaito from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal,
You dare oppose me?
and finally Jack Atlas and...
Pearson, just know that wherever you are, things around here have finally been set straight.
Crow! Are we not allowed to show graves in this show anymore? These characters were included because, for a few reasons. First off, considering the plot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 and exploring dimensions that focus on a singular form of summoning, well, it makes sense to have characters return, especially since the prior 3 generations of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly focused on one summon method for each generation. Especially since the prior 3 generations of Yu-Gi-Oh! Were focused almost solely on one method of summoning for each generation. Secondly, I would imagine with the anniversary of Yu-Gi-Oh! Coming up, it'd be a good idea to bring back some characters from previous series as well. And I don't have a problem bringing back characters from prior iterations for a series. In fact, so long as it's not done for blatant fan service, it's a welcome treat to the audience who may have really enjoyed those characters. The problem though is one I touched upon in my Yu-Gi-Oh! GX video. Man, I am referencing that a lot, aren't I? You should probably go watch that video after this one. The problem that, by the way, is that there are too many characters. I complained a lot that one of my biggest issues is the number of characters in GX, and that's a problem here too with Arc 5, with the legacy characters being the main issue. The addition of the legacy characters is that they either ended up stealing too much screen time, or they're just pointless filler. And they're not even the same characters that people remember. They're alternate universe characters, do not have any actual affiliation with the previous series outside names and looks.
That sounds like a complete waste of my time.
So a lot of what made the characters endearing in their own series is gone, and frankly could have easily been replaced with characters that are original in Arc 5. Let me give an example. Also introduced in the SYNCHRO arc because fuck you Crow is a character named Shinji.
Now come on, Shinji, let's get this party on.
A duelist who's trying to start a revolution because of the tops discriminating against the lower class in the slums. With Crow though, it's rather redundant to have the character, and frankly I feel that Shinji is a much better counterpart to Yuya. Both characters believe that weaker cards are not worthless. The only difference is that Yuya was more pacifistic and Shinji was more antagonistic and wanted to lead a revolution. You could do the same thing with Aster, who was against the idea of dueling that could be used for anything other than as a weapon. You could have just had the same effect with the Tyler sisters, who are also agents from Duel Academy who hunted people down and turned them into cards.
Chillax, wait and see.
And Yuya indoctrinates them all anyway, so why not? Really, if I'm being honest, the only legacy character that was really had a big role was Jack Atlas. And I'm not saying just because I happen to be a fan of his. It's because this version of Jack Atlas actually challenges Yuya's preconceived notions of what dueling is and actually beats the tar out of Yuya in 3 turns. But aside from Jack, most of the other legacy duelists don't feel all that fleshed out, and it actively hurts the show since they take up a lot of screen time and come off as redundant in storytelling. That could have been a lot more time freed up for the next aspect that I want to go into.
And unfortunately, there were no survivors. Oh, this just in. Card games on motorcycles!
Card games on motorcycles!
I actually really like the characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Hell, my favorite character is Sawatari.
I mean, people change. Look at me. I used to be handsome and now I'm gorgeous.
Even design-wise, I like the characters in this. Part of me really wants to run Super Heavy Samurai because the concept of a character named Gongensaka's deck is to run robotic samurai that attack with their bulky defenses, and why not? With that new support it got, it's a legit powerful deck now. Each of the characters has a unique flair to them, but the problem lies in how the anime is so bogged down with Yuya's redundant development and pushing more and more of the legacy characters into it that it's a detriment to the main cast. Let's first consider Sawatari. He starts off as a scumbag in the show, being one of the first people to face against Yuya after he discovered pendulum summoning, even going so far as to steal the pendulum cards that Yuya used. After getting trounced, Sawatari actually begins to change, and you can see this in his deck strategy. For those who don't know, pendulum monsters count as spell cards that remained on the field, so Sawatari changes his deck to that of a monarch deck, one that focused on Mobius the Frost Monarch, which destroys spells and trap cards.
Mobius, represent!
Granted, the strategy backfires on him when his destruction tactics were used against him in a duel against a Yuya lookalike, but Salvatore evolves again, and he becomes more of a showboater. Not in a bad way, mind you, but more like an entertainer. He evolves his deck again using the SYNCHRO archetype that focuses on bouncing cards rather than destroying them. And that's actually pretty interesting to see his character evolve not just through his deck building, but also how he became a somewhat likable character, despite the show's best efforts to keep putting him down, such as not allowing him to have an actual win on screen on his own. Another character I want to point out is Serena. She is of the fusion dimension counterpart to Yuzu, and she starts off strong trying to be on the front lines of a dimensional war, actively invading the standard dimension. She soon learns from the devastation of what it means and eventually turns to the professor in Duel Academy and learns that dueling can be used for fun, and then gets captured where she gets put under mind control. I really hate how every Yu-Gi-Oh series, at least as far as I know, has a mind control plot on a girl. Bonus points if they're underage, god damn it!
So that's the best you can do?
Creepiness aside, there's a reason why I bring up these two characters in particular. It's because of the end credits of the original Japanese, shown here. Then I just say, creepiness aside, don't attempt to kiss a girl while they're sleeping. That can land you sexual assault charges.
Stop right there, criminal scum! You violated my mother.
Anyway, ignoring that reality, let's talk about the implication. That being that Salvatore has feelings for Serena. That's not in the show at all! And I think that's a missed opportunity. Not the sexual assault stuff, but Salvatore having a crush or feelings for Serena. Actually be a new angle for both characters and possibly show a different side of the two of them, and flesh them out. It also opened up the potential character snafu between Salvatore and Yuya. You see, in the tail end of the SYNCHRO arc, Serena gets kidnapped back by Academia, where she's brainwashed. Ugh. And during that, Yuya was attempting to save both Serena and Yuzu, who were both being targeted by Academia's forces. Now, imagine if Salvatore did have feelings for Serena, and when he learned that Yuya failed to save Serena, he'd put the blame on Yuya for it. Just imagine a different character dynamic and conflict to arise between these two characters who could be considered rivals. But alas, we don't get that. Hell, we don't even get that many character interactions between the main group most of the time in the SYNCHRO arc. Literally during the Friendship Cup, all the characters are separated and locked away in hotel rooms, so we can't even have interactions between the characters during matches. They literally split the party for this, and if you're familiar with D&D, that's something you never want to do. Now, I've been alluding to it here and there, but we have to talk about the SYNCHRO arc. It's where Arc 5's story began to plummet. I already brought up the tournament arc, where the creators decided it would be a great idea to have a tournament arc right after we just had one in the standard dimension. I've railed on tournament arcs in the past, on less than acceptable videos, and the Friendship Cup is probably the worst. Not only because of the aforementioned separation of characters, but because almost every duel took way too much time. There was a lot of fat that could have been trimmed, and because of the SYNCHRO arc, a lot of time was taken away from the X-Season Fusion arc, which is not helped by the terrible pacing of the duels after that, but if you want a breakdown of the number of episodes for each arc and dimension, the standard had 53 episodes, the SYNCHRO arc had 46, the XCs had 11, no joke. The Fusion arc had 27, and the final Pendulum arc was 7 episodes. The SYNCHRO arc was dragged out, introducing a ton of pointless characters and the conflict of commons versus the tops. Essentially, this arc stalled the core plot of the show with little to no actual progression. Hell, there was actually another character, Yugioh, who's the SYNCHRO version of Yuya. He was essentially turned to a joke character who had a running gag of people messing up his name, and guess what? Yuya never actually gets the chance to talk to him. Yeah, they duel in the standard dimension, but that's pretty much the only interaction the two ever get.
What the hell is this?
This arc is probably one of the biggest issues I have with Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, and that's there are too many characters. This is a complaint I levied at GX as I mentioned, and one I'll levy at Zexal, and one I'm levering right now at Arc 5. The SYNCHRO arc is probably the biggest contributor to that since it had so many characters that ultimately did not matter. And because of that, it hurt the main cast of characters. They never got a real chance to actually be friends or allies because that was taken away to make room for FUCK YOU CROW! The main cast constantly got benched save for Yuya. Hell, Crow literally broke Salvatore's duel disc in the Fusion arc so he couldn't duel until the final battle against Zark. What? bullshit is this? Oh, and it's the arc where Arc 5 decided to kill its female characters as actual characters and duelists, too. I honestly don't want to go too far into talking about the girls of Arc 5, since, well, my flagship series when talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Focuses on how the writing for the female characters is less than subpar, and trust me, it gets bad for Arc 5. So, since I want to save most of my thoughts for the female characters on that video if it ever comes out, let's talk about lamps!
It begins!
No, I'm not kidding. Now, there's a concept I'm a little shaky on, but considering what happens to the girls in Arc 5, I feel like I should talk about it. There's an idea called the sexy lamp test, and just saying that a reference to characters like this is kinda disgusting.
And there was much rejoicing.
This test is supposed to be a branch off the Bechdel test, and part of the reason why I'm hesitant to reference this test is because of the quote associated with it. So there's the Bechdel test. I've got another test that works just as well, the sexy lamp test. If you can take out a female character and replace her with a sexy lamp, you're a fucking hack!
What the fuck am I reading?
But the idea that your characters, and I'm going to be more broad and just say more than just female characters, and it's to ask, what does your character do?
Brilliant! Brilliant!
I've talked about Mary Sue's, I've touched on damsel in distress writing aspects on this channel, and I don't discount any side of this sort of thing. It's hard to actually listen to people who act like this, though.
We must overreact immediately!
But the idea isn't to be discarded.
No one could win with these!
Alright, let's consider Yuzu. She started off as a really good character. She was a competent duelist, willing to learn from her defeats, evolve her tactics by learning how to use fusion, could be very athletic, and honestly she was proactive in trying to figure things out. She was willing to confront Sawatari when he was plotting revenge against Yuya, and she was the one who prevented Serena from being captured by switching places with her. She was a great character. But you know what?
I think I'm gonna go stare at a wall for a while and rethink everything.
I can tell you the instant where Yuzu's character began to fade away from the writer's mind.
Well, look what I found.
Oh no, I'm cornered. Yuya, I wish you were here!
Now, before people start getting on my case, there's nothing wrong with a character being scared and wishing for someone they're close with to be there with them. That is not my point. This is where things began to take a turn for the worse, is what I'm getting at. Because after this, Yuzu became more of a plot device for the rest of the cast to find.
What were they thinking?
She became less prominent in dueling. After her 2 duels in the Friendship Cup, she only had 1 more duel, and that was with another character who was ultimately pointless.
This is a waste of everyone's time. There's so much more I could be doing right now.
To give you an idea, her last solo duel was in episode 77, and there are about 148 episodes to the entire series. Think about that for a minute. And to make things worse, they essentially turned Yuzu and her counterparts into princesses trapped in towers. And no, I'm not joking. Literally 2 of Yuzu's counterparts are trapped in towers in the fusion dimension. I just don't get it. I don't get this mentality. You had an amazing female character, someone who was willing to take a huge physical risk in order to beat an opponent, and remove all the development to make her into a helpless damsel in distress. This is even worse than what they did with Aki in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. At least Aki didn't regress as a character in 5Ds. She didn't become completely helpless. Yuzu? Oh God. Like, with an example like this, I can't help but think that maybe some writers are hacks. Most notably Katsumi Ono and his obsession with Crow. They learned nothing from 5Ds.
Looks like your brain's still bamboozled too!
No, it's worse. Because it wasn't just Yuzu who's a casualty because of this dumb decision. It was pretty much all the new characters aside from Yuya who got starved with this. Oh, and now we get to the best part. One look on my channel and you'll find that I love talking about villains and antagonists. You just gotta take one look at my library where I talk about these kinds of characters all the time. Sometimes positive and sometimes negative. Leo AKABA, one of the long-running antagonists throughout this entire series, is a villain that I hate. Okay, so I've been sitting on this part of the video ever since I watched Arc 5 years ago. No joke, Leo AKABA is probably what I consider to be the dumbest character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And a terrible antagonist and character to boot. I do not use those words lightly. This guy is a character that I will hate until the day I die. You can point to characters like Chloe from Life is Strange or Haida from Agretzko. They're annoying, sure, but I can tolerate them, and can understand their reasonings to an extent. I cannot extend this same courtesy to this stupid, bald dumbass. He is so poorly written that it hurts my brain just remembering his stupidity. Leo AKABA is probably the biggest issue I have throughout the series of Yugioh, and why the writers thought it was a good idea to use him is beyond me. So let's start with his motivations. Leo wants his daughter back. He retained his memories from the original world before it was split to stop Zark from destroying everything. In order to stop Zark, Leo's daughter Rei used special cards to split not only Zark into 4 pieces, but her as well. So Leo's goal is to get his daughter back. Okay, makes sense so far. At least until Leo decides to go to the fusion dimension, create the AKABA, manipulate thousands of kids to become soldiers and invade realms, turn people into cards so they can be used for a greater utopia, which was a lie. Said cards of people were being used as fuel so he could revive his daughter, essentially Leo's brainwashing a lot of kids, using them to ultimately kill people, just to save his daughter, even though there's no guarantee it would work, and it didn't. Oh, let's talk about his goal to get his daughter back. In order to do that, he has to get the 4 pieces of Rei and merge them, essentially erasing 4 girls who, I may add, also act as blocks from allowing Zark to revive. And Leo's goal, aside from getting his daughter back, is also to stop Zark from reviving. Now, I've already got issues with this, but let's consider the following. Leo raised a character named Yuri, a character who's the fusion component of Zark.
He's Squidward, you're Squidward, I'm Squidward! Are there any other Squidwards I should know about?
Meow.
The character that Leo was trying to stop from destroying the world. What does Leo do? He trains the character to be a powerful duelist, makes him ruthless, and has him go out on missions to capture the components of Rei with no precautions. I don't know, if you know that this kid is part of the world-ending jackass who could easily revive, wouldn't you know? I don't know, turn him into a card? But no. So good plan there, Leo, you bald dumbass. Even more so when you consider that his ultimate goal is to prevent Zark from reviving, but he does no recon to see what the counterparts of both his daughter and Zark are doing. Because here's the rub, Zark ended up being revived because Leo's actions of kidnapping Yuzu and the other 2 components of Rei, which caused Yuya, Yuto, and Yugioh to go chasing after them, and eventually meeting up, caused this. Congratulations, Leo, your dumbassery and tunnel vision caused the one thing you didn't want to happen, because you're so stupid you couldn't be bothered to even think as to why Zark hasn't been revived till you started your own genocidal plans. Now, in case you didn't notice, this is the driving force of the plot, and the only reason why the big boss of the anime gets revived is because of this idiot. In fact, let's take a moment to observe a certain scene, and this comes later in the series when Yuya is dueling Leo. At this point, Yuya and his fused counterpart Yuto are struggling to keep Zark in check, having just used a powerful new monster to nuke the field and about to teeter off the edge. Yuzu and the other girls are trapped in a device that will supposedly fuse them back into Rei, effectively killing them. And throughout this duel, Leo's been actively antagonizing Yuya and threatening to fuse the girls into one, making Yuya rage harder, at least until Yuzu and the other components of Rei plead for Yuya to calm down. And it actually works. At least until Leo, who at this point I would like to point out is a scientist, takes this opportunity to activate the machine that is fusing the girls together more. This in turn makes Yuya get controlled by Zark more, and now the girls can no longer reach out to him. Great move, genius! This is why people don't trust scientists and think they're all mad. Oh, to make things more funny, his plan fails. Yep, the fragments of his daughter are essentially dead, along with almost everyone who was carded, at least until they're somehow released when Zark revives. Well, save for the girls. The writing in this show is terrible, and Leo AKABA is probably the biggest letdown of them all as a villain.
That's it. No more white wine spritzers before bedtime for me.
So after about 18 pages of me complaining about this series, what's left to say? Well, a lot actually. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 has a lot more problems than what I've covered. I didn't even bring up the disappointment that is Reiji AKABA or the issues I have with Rei. The latter I'm actually saving for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Girls Arc 5 video if I ever get to that. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 is probably the biggest disappointment of all Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. And I say that because despite my complaints, I really do love the characters in this. Not for how they ended up, but because of all the potential that they had and the potential that the story had. I wouldn't say Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 is the worst that the Yu-Gi-Oh! series has to offer, but it certainly didn't get a fair shake, whether it be due to piss-poor writing skill, upper management having their heads up their asses, or because one guy seemed to be overly obsessed with a character who I utterly hate with every fiber in my body, decided to stuff said character down the viewers' throats again. Arc 5 is a series that I want to like, and frankly the first arc is still pretty enjoyable, even if it too has some issues with fluff and time wasting. But the wasted potential of Arc 5 is something that I'll always look back upon and sigh. And with that, I'm going to sign off. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'm MangaKamen, thank you for watching, and good night.